I now call on Councillor Hogg to formally move and Councillor McKinney to second the motion on private renting in Wandsworth.
Moved.
There is an amendment to the motion that has been circulated to the Council chamber. Can I ask Councillor Ellis and Sallier to move and second this amendment?
Madam Mayor, I move the amendment.
Formally seconded.
And the first speaker is Councillor McKinney.
I was very pleased when I walked in today and saw this amendment, because actually it's what I'm going to talk about very briefly, about licensing the private rental sector. And on the unamended amendment, there is a bit about working in partnership with other boroughs to drive out rogue landlords. There's also number 4, that the private rented sector has a large number of amateur landlords who are sometimes unaware of their responsibilities. It also has a small minority of rogue landlords who deliberately exploit their tenants. Good, because that's what I would like to actually... I've been doing a little bit of research behind licensing landlords, and I've had a look at Newham, and I've had a look at Croydon, and Newham has been licensing landlords for a long time, and they have a proven record, if the council would like to go and talk to them at some point. But it's a successful story, is what I'm trying to say. So I would just like to start at the beginning and go very quickly through my 3 layers, which starts with students. And as you know, Roehampton is unique in Wandsworth because we have a university and we have students living in Roehampton in our private rental sector. And at the moment, the university currently has approximately 90% of off-campus students in private rental sector, and the remainder is in what's called a head lease property. And this is where the university has made an arrangement with the private landlord that the university will guarantee the rent as long as the landlord guarantees a decent place where the student can study. Now, they have a contract that they don't necessarily sign, but any landlord that wishes to apply to take students on has to agree the contract, but there is no incentive or stick if they break the contract. And of course, we do have students who have horrible experiences in private rental sector in Roehampton, and it's all to do with damp, and they get asked to leave the window open during the day and keep the heating on during the day. But of course, this isn't practical because the student actually is out during the day having taught sessions at the university and can't afford the heating. So there is a huge amount of condensation in Roehampton. We then have the private rental sector in Roehampton as well. I'm sticking to Roehampton because obviously I'm from Roehampton, I'm a councillor there, and I know the stories of the people of Roehampton, and one is of overcrowding, where there's a private rental person, landlord, who has 8 people living in a 2-bedroom flat. 3 of those people are mum and dad and their 6-year-old daughter, who's been at Heathmere since reception. She's due to go into year 2. These 3 have lived there for coming on to 4 or 5 years, and they have put up with 5 other residents coming and going as those who come and pass through the house, which the landlord is renting out to 8 people. Shared facilities, and this family of 3 live in 1 bedroom. So that's one of my sort of trying to work out, help them to come out of that. My main point about the private rental sector is the homelessness, because in the Housing and Regeneration OSC, we have heard over and over again that it's the private rental sector that actually causes many of the evictions that leads to the homelessness in the borough. And there are various reasons why the people are evicted, not always fair reasons, but they are the biggest institutions of homelessness. And now what the council are going to suggest is that we actually use the private rental sector to accommodate our homeless with a cash incentive. Now, I'm very worried about that because, okay, this is taking the worst scenario and it's taking the worst rogue landlord I can possibly think or imagine that says, okay, I'd like your cash incentive, I'll take your homeless family. Oh dear, after 6 months I'm going to evict them because they asked for a very minor repair, and oh yes, can I have another homeless family please? Oh, and I'll take the cash incentive. The cycle continues, but I'm sure the councillor will absolutely on top of that and will not let that happen. That's just a completely random idea of how dangerous actually homeless and private rental sector goes together. But what I'm suggesting is that the Wandsworth start looking at licensing, and as you can see, you are here. So let me tell you about Newham. Newham have encouraged landlords, I do apologise, encouraged landlords to take out licensing. If they don't agree or they become rogue landlords, they are fined £20,000. But I would rather that we look after our residents and as opposed to our landlords, and we please bring in a licensing scheme. Thank you.
And this is Councillor Salio's maiden speech.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm very excited to be making it this evening. I was worried I was going to get chopped again. I'd like to begin by what is a very belated thank you to the voters of Balham Ward for electing me last May, and also to my two colleagues in the ward, Councillors Ellis and Usher, who've been very kind and helpful, sharing their experience with me. I read with interest the opposition's motion on the private rental sector in Wandsworth, and I found it puzzling for a number of reasons. Their characterisation of the whole Wandsworth rental model seems to me very pessimistic. It doesn't take into account the fact that rents are expensive across London. And although we do have some unscrupulous and ill-informed landlords, we also have a lot of good landlords and good properties, and quite a vibrant private rental sector in the borough. I feel like this sort of flat and negative view is what's given them to come up with these 5 sort of solutions, and basically most of which are things that are already underway, and a couple of them are things that would harm the sectors that are doing well and hinder any progress that we need to make in the future. I'm planning on taking them one by one and being brief as the hour is late. To start off with the promotion of the use of more stable rental contracts. This is something the Council have been doing for a while. It's something we've had quite a bit of success with. But it's also not the only thing we need to be doing. A one-size-fits-all approach, I think, in housing isn't necessarily a good thing. One of the great things about Wandsworth is our diversity, and we do need a very diverse housing market with a variety of tenure types, because some people do enjoy the flexibility offered by a short assured tenancy. The second point on improving inspections of homes, again, doesn't appear to take into account the really hard work that the private rental sector team do to gain access to private property and all the difficulties involved in doing that. The team must work really, really hard, in particular targeting multi-occupancies in Roehampton's student dwellings. We've seen at committee a couple of examples of how they've enforced the rules there. And I think we need to sort of acknowledge their success and work out ways to help them build on that success in the future. The same is this case in this sort of call to stop rogue landlords. Again, the team's working really hard on that. And unfortunately, it's something they'll probably always have to work hard on. It's not sort of feasible to end rogue landlords entirely. And I think continuing on our work, signing up landlords to the Mayor of London's rental standard is a great way of kind of ensuring that more and more landlords in the borough are not only aware of their responsibilities, but are actually fulfilling them. Landlord licensing is something which we have been looking at for quite a while, and it's a really complex area, and I think there are obvious benefits to having it in place, but it's also something that we cannot just do on a whim or without examining everything thoroughly to start with. It can end up really, really depressing the market. It can end up pushing up red tape for good landlords. It can cause supply reductions and various other issues. It's something I would definitely support if we did our investigations correctly, and I think it's something we should continue to look at in the future. The call to ensure that all landlords in receipt of housing benefit maintain decent standards. That again is one of our stated aims, and not just for those that receive housing benefit, but for all of our tenants across Wandsworth. Our housing teams do work to ensure that they are all living in decent homes. The final opposition suggestion, which is ending fees for renters, this to me has always been a bit of a red herring. It's I always assume that if there's a genuine cost there, it's just going to be recouped somewhere else in the value chain. It's going to end up on the rental bill or in some other fee or charge. And I think that it's much better, the amendment that we're proposing here, which is that we look at fee transparency and we make sure that if they're not transparent, if they're not operating within the law, that we prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. I'm proud of the work we undertake in the Housing Department in Wandsworth, and I'm proud of our innovative approaches to getting the best deals for all of our residents. And that's why I'm unable to support a motion which characterises the sector negatively, seems to refuse to celebrate our many successes, and has failed to offer any new, workable or clear solutions to the problems that do exist in the rental market. Therefore, I urge colleagues to vote against the opposition motion and for our counter motion, which supports our great work to date and hopefully shows a pathway to more success in the future. Thank you.
Very nicely delivered maiden speech, Councillor Sellier. Right. The matter now before the Council is the amendment proposed by Councillor Ellis and seconded by Councillor Sellier concerning the motion at item 17 about private rented sector. Please indicate by a show of hands those for the amendment. And those against?
Okay, the amendment is carried 32-18.
The motion is carried.
The amendment.
The amendment is carried 32-18.
So the motion now before the council is the motion as amended.
The motion before the Council is now the motion as amended.
Is that agreed on the same numbers?
Is that agreed on the same numbers?
Okay, so it's agreed. Is that agreed?
Is that agreed unanimously?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.